Hi students, today I am going to discuss the public key infrastructure. So it is a very important concept in the key distribution. So public key infrastructure is denoted by PKI. So it provides assurance of public key. It provides the identification of the public keys and their distribution. In last video, we will discuss how the public key distribution is taken, because the distribution can be taken in the four different ways: the public key announcement, public key available directory, and the public key authority, and the public key certificate. So these are the four different ways to distribute the public keys. So now coming to the public key infrastructure, it is one of the authentication provision of the distribution of a public key. So the server can maintain every process, that is management, identification of the management. The management takes the role of communication in between the client and server. So here some of the components in the public key infrastructure is nothing but a public key certificate, and commonly referred as a digital certificate, and second one is the private key tokens, and third one is the certificate authority, and fourth one is the registration authority, and fifth one is the certificate management system. So now you can observe these five different types of components is used in the public key infrastructure. Now we go through that simple diagram of this particular. A private key storage is there. A private key store is the storage of the private keys generated by the sender and the receiver. Now this is the a total infrastructure or architectural procedure of the public key infrastructure. So here the key pair is there. A key pair is nothing but the private key and the public key, so which denoted by the user A or derived by the user B. Now you may be observed the key pair. So the two keys are the related keys. Now you know that public key concept. So the two keys are generated, the public key and the private key, but the two keys are interrelated keys. Now we can observe that is the pair of keys. So the pair of keys are protected. So because the secrecy is in private key, not in public key. So that's why the private key is stored in the the private key is stored in the one particular storage process, so which is the protected manner. So when it is required, then only the verification can be taken place. For example, the OTP process, one time password based. So the OTP can be sent the user a valid user only. So the management or the authorized party can send that particular information to the only the a particular genuine holder. So he only receives that information, and again based on that the operation should be taken place. So that means the private key is stored in that particular location, which is in the protected way. And coming to this particular public key infrastructure, so the certificate signature request is taken, okay, that is from the client. The client send a request for the certification authority, so for the communication purpose. So that means once the certificate registration is confirmed, so how the public key that is certification registered should be completed, that is with the help of the public key only, because the public key can be distributed to anywhere. So that's why here the client can send the public key to that particular request manner, that is a certificate signing request. So that means that particular request can be submitted to the certificate authority. So whatever the request is coming from the client, that request is sent to the certification authority, so which is taken process of that particular administrator. So coming to that, once that request is submitted to the certificate authority issues one certificate to the client directly. You can observe here. So it is very specifically designed this particular process. So here the a client can send the request to the public key, okay, to the certificate verification. Now the this one particular process sent to the request to the certificate authority. So once the certificate authority, so this is the third party may involved and send that request to the certificate authority. So the certificate authority is issue one of the certificate through the, what the particular holder can have the account. So through through that process only the certificate authority can send the certificate to the client. So once the client having that particular certificate, then only the communication should be taken place. So here what the concept is, the public key infrastructure. So using this particular public key, so the clients and send the request to this particular certificate. Once it will be confirmed, the certificate authority can take the whole process and send back to the certificate to the client. Once the certificate is received from the authority, so that is a basic point to communicate with the help of this private key. Okay, so the communication will be taken place. Now you may be observed, this is the example, simple identification of this particular public key generator. PKG is there. So here the private key is generated by this particular PKG. So the user A communicates to user B. Here you can observe in the diagram, user A is Alice is communicated to the Bob. So that is using his public key. So based on that public key, so that registration will be required. So based on that, the user can send, the Bob user, that is a recipient, can send that particular registration process to the registration authority. So once the registration authority is confirmed, and again he send the request for the private key, so which is generated by the PKG. So the PKG issues the obtained private key to the Bob. So here through this particular structure, the Bob cannot generate his private key, even though the private key is secured, but which is generated by the PKG itself. That's why here the public key infrastructure can be provided. Everything is handled by the particular authority only, not for the client. So for the safe side, suppose for example, so we have a mail ID and the password. So once we got the we forget the password, immediately we are requesting to the server for getting the password. Immediately the server, that means the server can take the authority, so certificate authority. So once he verifies the mail ID, whether that mail ID, that means the user can have the account for this particular process or not. Once it may be the clarified, so then it gives resend the password with based on some of the credential. So if the mobile number is added, so they can send some of the Google code to that particular mobile. So after that, once it will check the confirmation, so the user is the valid, then only it send back to the password to that particular user. So in this whole process we can observe, so this is the process how we can request it to the authority. The authority itself is generated the private key and sent back to the particular user. So here this is the public key authority. Now you can observe how the public key infrastructure can be used. The infrastructure totally depends on the hash algorithm. You know, the hash is nothing but a public function which maps a message in any length into a fixed length hash value, which serves as its authenticator. So that means here the original data is fed to the hash algorithm, and finally it can prepare one private key. With the help of the private key, it can generate one of the information. That information will be called as the signed message. So once the signed message is received by the receiver, and he try to identify that particular message using the secret key. So in totally in the public key infrastructure, the main role is the hash algorithm. Using the hash cryptographically protected data and also generated some secret information to send to the destination party. So based on this particular signed message is the digital signature which is signed by the authority only. So that means the third party also involved to take the particular process. So in that secret key generation, and finally he can reveal, say, using his public key, the sender's public key, finally the Bob can receive the original message. So here the both confidential messages are generated by the sender point of view. So based on that, so finally, so using that particular a common secret key is generated by the both users. Based on that, the message can be revealed. So without having this public key infrastructure, so we can't generate the confidential message, so with the help of some certificate authority. This is the main concept of the public key infrastructure.